Hello.
Yeah, hi Eduardo. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be starting in 10 minutes. And also, I want to inform the participants, we are also live streaming this on YouTube. So if you are facing any issue in the Zoom, so you can join there also.
Okay. Sorry, should I write in the chat if I have any question, if I have any trouble?
Yeah, you can write in the chat, or you can message to this analytics with the account, or I have my colleague Rishabh with me also. So you can write in the chat, or you can tell to me also if you have any concern.
Okay.
Hello to all the participants join. You can see in the chat, we also have upcoming DataHour sessions. Meanwhile, you can check them out in the link provided in the chat. Hi everyone, we will be starting session in 7 to 8 minutes. Meanwhile, let's get to know each other. In the chat, we can type our name and the device from which we are joining. Thank you. Hello everyone. Most of the participants from Zoom must be seeing the poll which I have put up. So please, I request all to fill in that poll so that we can understand the demography of our attendants. Thank you. Hello all. I can see that most of the participants are joining in. So we'll just wait for 1 to 2 minutes for all the participants to join. Please stay tuned. So I think we can start. So hello and welcome everyone to another session in this DataHour series. We are thrilled to be here with you this evening for a session full of action-packed learning. I am Ketak Gunjal, part of the data science team at Analytics Vidya, and I will be moderating this session along with my colleague Rishabh Kumbalkar. For those who have joined us for the first time, a brief introduction about the DataHour sessions. The DataHour is a series of webinars conducted by Analytics Vidya, led by top industry experts. It is a fun way to understand the concepts of data science from leading players in data tech domain. And as the name suggests, it is 1 hour wholly dedicated to data. We are hopeful that these sessions are going to be a great source of enrichment and value adding for all our community members. Now, our session today is feature engineering on images using convolutional neural networks, that is CNNs. In this DataHour, CNN's basic concepts will be explained and some examples will be covered using Python and TensorFlow and Keras also. In addition to this, some state-of-the-art architectures will be described and also the possibilities of using those architectures in software developments will be discussed. So I hope you all are excited to attend this session with us. Before we kick things off and I hand it over to our speaker, a quick recap of housekeeping items. We are recording this session and we will make the recording available in a few days on our YouTube channel. The link for that will be available in the chat section. Please use Q&A section for asking any questions you might have during the session, and the speaker will do his best to answer them as DataHour progresses or towards the end. Also, we will be sharing a poll about the feedback of the session towards the end, so I request you all to kindly fill that up. Now, on to our speaker today. In this session of DataHour, we have Eduardo Zamina with us. Eduardo has done PhD in computer science on the subject of structural analysis of mathematical models from chemical engineering and relevance propagation on topical networks. Currently, he is working as a scientific researcher on the development of methodologies and architectures for information retrieval and extraction over large volumes of text. Besides, he is also working on deep learning applied to image processing tasks, including handwritten text recognition. Currently, he is also a professor in computer vision and also data science chairs. So over to you, Eduardo. The virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I don't know if I can start my video or no, I'm not able to.
Is there any problem with camera?
I think I don't have a problem with my camera, but I can start it. But well, I will try to share my screen.
Yes, sure. Please try that.
I cannot share my screen too. I think you should enable it from.
I have made you co-host. Can you try again?
Yes, I can now. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yes, welcome.
Yes, can you see me also?
Yeah, we can see your screen as well as you. You can start.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thanks for the presentation. Well, I'll be talking about this hour of feature engineering in images by means of, well, convolutional neural networks. I will try to explain some concepts about that, and well, I will try to transmit some knowledge and state-of-the-art tools and architectures that actually can be used for different proposals. They are available for any task that we want to perform, and there are very good tools for production environments, and so it's good to know that they are available for some tasks of our daily developments. And well, I will talk about the feature engineering tasks that we can perform with that, because the features and characteristics that we can get from convolutional neural networks, or CNNs for short, are a very high abstraction that helps computers and mathematical models to get better values of precision and efficiency when processing images, videos, or other kinds of structures, as we will be seeing in a while. So can you hear me well, right?
Yes, I got it. We can hear you right. All right.
Okay, just to check. Thank you. Well, so going with the presentation, I will be introducing this topic of CNNs and some specific problems of computer vision that we will be approaching here. And I will try to explain why CNNs are good for this. And we will look through the feature engineering process that we perform with CNNs and what are its advantages. Next, I will try to explain how we use CNNs in machine learning and why they are a biologically inspired paradigm, and some advantages of using CNNs in contrast with, for example, multi-layer perceptrons or things like that. I will not be covering very basic concepts about this because, well, I don't have much time for that, but you can ask me, or you can also complement these contents with specific literature about this. The concept of CNN is not very complex to understand, but it should be good to have at least a slightly background on machine learning. I will try to explain some applications that you can do with CNNs, not only in the field of computer vision or image classification or object detection, but also in texts or large volumes of text or other structures that have some spatial or temporal relation between the data objects. And then I will explain some CNN architectures that work well in computer vision. And finally, we'll be watching some, two examples in collaboratory of the application of specific cases of image classification and object detection. Just to explain maybe the potential of these tools and the most usual applications that we have for CNNs. Well, in the first step of this presentation, I like to present the problem that we are. Sorry, I will copy and paste the link of the drive folder that contains all the material, just for you to have also the presentation available in PDF format in the chat. Well, that's the link to the drive folder. Well, as I was saying, we have mainly two problems to solve here that actually we can solve with the use of CNNs, or convolutional neural networks. The first one that I will be attacking here is the image classification problem. You can think it as any kind of classification. Sorry. Oh, there's a problem with the link. Sorry, we'll try to fix this now. There's an error with the link. Just give me 1 second. Yes, for me it's working now, so I don't know if there's any problem. Okay, yes, I think it's working well. I will go with the presentation and then we will check again if the link is working. All right, sorry for that. Well, so we will be working with two problems here. The first is image classification. In these kind of problems, we have always some sets of images that we want to classify by means in a set of categories. Here, for example, I show a problem where we could want to classify images if they are showing a dog or a cat, or maybe we can have many categories like products in a supermarket or a drugstore that we want to classify for some sort of virtual store or something like that. And in these kinds of classification problems, we have many classes that we want to classify our images into one of those classes. It's a more simple problem than object detection, where we have some image, and in every image that we have, we should be able to recognize by means of a mathematical model and software which objects are present in that image, and we want to detect as many objects as they exist in that image. So it's a very more complex problem than image classification. So these are the two problems that we will be seeing mostly in the scripts. And yes, I watch in the chat. You have to add the last slash in the link to make it work. We have two problems, one more simpler than the other. So this is a very important thing to take into account, as we will see there. But we can solve the two problems by means of use of CNNs, as we will see later. But what are specifically CNNs and how we can use them for tasks on computer vision or other fields? CNNs are specific class of neural layers that are not fully connected layers. It means that every neuron or every piece of data is not connected with the complete set of neurons from layer to layer, but we have connections with specific regions that are with the neighborhoods of each piece of data that connects to that. They are a specific class of neural layer in machine learning neural models, in the sense that they allow us to get some abstract features about the data that we couldn't get with a plain representation of the data. And it's helpful not only in the field of computer vision, but it's helpful, for example, for videos, text, audio signals, and all. For example, we are using it in handwritten text recognition that involves some computer vision too. But when we have some spatial or temporal dependence or relation between, for example, here in the pixels, we can represent some abstract patterns that give us more interesting information than only the position of a pixel. So CNNs are usually used or employed as a previous step for feature extraction or feature engineering in classification or detection models in general. So you can think about that as an automated process for extracting some characteristics of the data that we weren't able to do with just plain features like, for example, a count of different intensities of the pixels or histograms or things like that, that are actually handcrafted features and not automatic processing. Well, why should we use CNNs instead of, for example, multilayer perceptrons? Well, multilayer perceptrons have this total connection of every item of data with many, in many layers, but they can achieve so good results in terms of the patterns that are underlying the structure of pixels. And CNNs produce feature maps in different layers of abstractions that help to acquire some more abstract and specific details of the images. For example, you can get some lines or some shapes represented in a specific and very useful way, and more useful than just having the multi-layer perceptron structure that only relates the information in the pixels. So these feature maps are actually the last features that will be used in a CNN architecture, usually by a multi-layer perceptron that is in the end of the structure. That's the most frequent way models are built with CNNs. So this is what feature engineering with CNNs is about. We have in the more traditional case without CNNs, we have some regular or handcrafted features that maybe should require, for example, the presence of a specialist or specialized person. Like, for example, if you have a problem of X-ray images for detecting COVID or some disease, and you maybe should need the presence of a medicine that have that have more knowledge about how the structure of those images can tell you if an X-ray image is of an ill person or not. And well, with CNNs, maybe the model is completely trained to know how to extract some features that tell if an image corresponds to an ill person or not. So it's a process of automatically getting knowledge and getting features that help to classify better images in categories or detecting some specific objects in the images. And actually, CNNs are a mechanism that learns automatically from the data to get these features and make the best to classify or detect something. So how CNN do that? It's only providing high level of abstractions of the feature of the images by means of feature maps. And that's how we can get some better representative characteristics of the objects present there. Well, in the first place, for the next slide, I wanted to clarify how we can represent our images. Generally speaking, an image it can be seen as a matrix of intensities in the pixels that there are in the image, actually, for representing the colors of the image. We can have a one-channel representation if we have, for example, a grayscale image where we have every cell of the matrix that represents a pixel in the image have only the value of intensity from black to white. And if we have a representation colorful of the image, I mean in colors, usually we get this kind of representation, the red, green, and blue format, where we have three matrices basically, and each one represents the intensities in the channels of these colors. So this is the way we will be representing the images here. Well, and what is exactly a convolution? A convolution is the application or the result of applying a filter or mask to every pixel of an image. But this particularly, which does is, it adds some information to every pixel about its neighbors. So we can do that with different levels of kernels and different, the kernels, as you can see in this image, maybe it's a representation of an image in grayscale, for example, and these are the complete set of pixels in the image. We run this filter by every pixel of the image, and we can what we do is a linear combination of the filter that we want to apply to the image that comes with the form of a matrix of, in this case, a 3x3 matrix. We apply this mask to every pixel in turns, passing through the whole image. And well, the application is only multiplying each element by each element in the corresponding position of the filter on the image, and summing this and changing the value of the pixel with this new value of information. Well, with this application of this max, we get a convolution or a new representation of the image that captures an important piece of information in every step. Generally, in every convolutional network, we don't use only one convolution in each layer. We actually use many convolutions that have different kernels or different values for these masks, and that makes sense when we want to get different features of the image. And there is also another step in convolutional neural networks, which is called subsampling step or pooling layers, that provide us with images or feature maps. You can think there are feature maps that are condensed representation of each feature extracted here. So sorry, I forgot to say that in the convolution step, we also have an activation step that when we have a pixel, a new pixel representation, we have to apply an activation step there as in any neural network structure. Usually the activation step is performed with a ReLU activation, a rectified linear unit, and that gives us the new value of the feature map in each pixel. So after the convolution step, we have usually subsampling steps that get more compact representation of the representations. And here we don't do it pixel by pixel, but we get some regions of pixels. And in each region, for example, this, we try to get one representation of the complete region. We can use a maximum a max pooling layer where we get the maximum value among all the pixels that we have. So in this example, we have this value of 20 here, and here we have the value of 30 here. And what we are doing here is actually getting the higher intensity there in each region, and acquiring a new image or a new feature map that is half size of the original one. So this way we are getting more compact representation that maybe will in a more efficient way capture the feature that we want to represent there. So we here provide smaller images, but not losing any piece of information. So, well, for those who don't have the link working, you have to add the final dash in the URL or get it to work. Well, so why CNNs are thought as a biologically inspired paradigm? They actually work as well in a very abstract representation way. They work as the different layers of neurons in the eyes, in the human eyes, for example, work, making different abstractions of the data that the neurons receive as activation, for example, as the light intensities gets into the cells of the eyes. And actually it was discovered that every receptor of of light is connected to a higher level layer of neurons. And these higher level neurons get the information from specific regions of what we are seeing, and they are making some abstractions on those data to get some patterns that increase in complexity as we go outside the layers. So, oh, thank you. I am seeing that someone resolved the problem with a shortened link. And well, as we go up in the layers of the human vision system, for saying it like that, we get different abstractions that are highly complexity, that have higher complexity as we go up. And finally, we get some features that in the first steps could be, for example, lines or basic shapes, but in higher layers we can get, for example, contrast differences or textures, and going higher we can say that we can find the presence of different objects or things like eyes or noses or mouths that actually are in the higher levels of our CNNs. So we say that CNNs are biologically inspired because of this way of working, of different levels of abstractions when we get deeper in the network. Well, for having a bigger picture about what I'm talking about now, I have copied this architecture of LeNet 5, which is one of the first convolutional layers that acquire good results. And here we can see, for example, it was used for handwritten digits classification. Here we can see a complete example or a structure where we have a first convolutional layer that gets, well, the inputs are 32 by 32 images in grayscale. We have only one channel. And after the input, we have a convolutional step where we get 6 images of 28 by 28. And this dimension is regarding the fact that we get rid of the border layers, the border pixels of the image, and it is a result of the convolution step, but it can be avoided if you want. So we can get here a 32 by 32 image, but well, here this structure gets us a first step of 6 feature maps from the image with the application of 6 convolutional kernels. You have to remember that the kernels that we apply to get the feature maps are actually trained with the model. So this is the way CNNs are so automatic for learning how to get features of the images. And we can see, for example, here as subsampling steps where we have images or feature maps that are half the size of the convolutional previous step. So we do this in some more steps, finally getting little pieces of information that are feature maps of 5 by 5. In this case, we have 16 convolutions of 5 by 5 that go from the previous layer. And after the complete process of a convolutional layer for feature extraction, we have always a final step of classification or regression that is in the end of the convolutional steps. It means that in the first steps, what we do is actually getting a set of feature maps that provides us information, very valuable information for the classification step. The classification step is the usually perform classification by means, for example, from a neural network here, multi-layer perceptron. But we can have here other types of classifiers, for example, super vector machines or things like that for regression if we think it should be appropriate. So the good thing here is that we have this feature map that it makes sense when we think about this automatic feature extraction as a means for not having to take measures of the data or have this handcrafted process. Well, and this is the way it works. Well, in the presentation, I have here the references to the papers that you can query if you want to see the actual source, the real source of this content. Well, so what are the advantages of using CNNs? Mainly, we have a very increasing efficiency when we use CNNs, because we don't need to train a very highly number of parameters, and the training and inference process are highly parallelizable, as we can do independent sessions of calculus with the different regions of an image. So that's why the fact of calculus is more easy for that. And also CNNs require a lower number of parameters than, for example, multilayer perceptrons, because we only require to get the actual weights or values for the filters that we are applying in each convolutional layer. So we have a drastically high reduction on the number of parameters, and we can make use of the parallelism with GPUs, for example, for getting better results. And one of the key things that make CNN so useful is this abstraction that gives us these feature maps that are capable of recognizing specific patterns. We can see that these patterns are lines, shapes, or contrasts, or textures, but it's very hard to see how the model interprets or analyzes these patterns. So it's a very complex process that it's very hard to understand by a human being in most cases. Well, to say about some applications that we can perform by means of CNNs, we can name, for example, in the scope of images and videos, we have the tasks of image classification or object detection, the two that I named before. You have also semantic segmentation, where you don't recognize the box that contains an object, but you recognize every pixel that composes the object. So you have like a shadow representing the object and not a bounding box. You can do in videos, you can do some scene detection, I mean separating a video in different steps or scenes. Also, you can do action recognition for knowing what a person is doing in a video. Or you can do object tracking, and there is a very high number of applications in the field of computer vision or images and videos. But also you can work with text sequence. For example, frequently we use representations like word-to-vec, which is a specific technique of learning representation or special space representations for words. And you can combine it with convolutions in one dimension, which is different. It's the same thing as we do with a convolution of images, but taking only into account one row of data. So we can use convolutions in different scopes, like text for NLP, or also NLP tasks can be performed with the use of convolutions, for example, for handwriting recognition and OCR post-processing. We are using some specific representations that capture some information of the data by means of CNNs. So we have a very wide spectrum of applications for text representations. And also in every field where we have spatial and temporal dependence of pieces of data, we can have better representations of those relations by means of CNNs. These are some examples. We can process audio sequences or time series, or also graph structures, or any kind of representation that involves some kind of specific spatial relation or temporal relation in data. Well, I will talk about some interesting architectures in the field, particularly of computer vision here, to maybe let you know how authors in the literature have worked, have attacked this problem of, in this case, image classification by the use of convolutional neural networks. Well, the case of VGG 16 or 19, there's another version, is maybe the first large-scale case of image classification in several classes. They made use of the ImageNet dataset. You can query that on the paper for a classification task over 1,200,000 of images. And they have an architecture like this, where we have basic, first order or simple CNN structures. For example, they require in the input that you resize your images to 224 by 224 by 3 format. It's a format of 3 channels representation, red, green, and blue, and this resolution for the images. So this tells us how the resolution or the size of the images should be, and from here we get a set of 64 representations of feature maps from the image, from the first image. It's important to say that the 3 channels are actually like convolved into one channel in the feature map, and we have several subsampling steps and convolution steps. You can see here that we have the half-size representations of the first images, and we have in the second step, we have 128 feature maps that arise from that. And well, going deeper through here, we have the feature engineering process that VGG does with the images. So up to here, we have a feature representation that goes to the MLP step, the multi-layer perceptron, that is in the end of the neural network. In the end of this network, we have this number of 1,000, which actually corresponds to the number of classes that we are classifying our images in. So if we have, for example, this car here, the output of the multi-layer perceptor should correspond to the class car images. Well, going beyond these kinds of architectures, we have, for example, the Inception Architecture, which is a neural network from Google. It was thought for image classification, but I think it has other cases too. And the new thing in this architecture is the use of this concatenation of convolutions. I mean, in the VGG example, we have some convolutions that are performed always in the same size in each layer. But here we can have layers that combine information in different sizes of kernels or different kinds of pooling layers. So this is like a shrinking way of representations that gave very interesting results. You can query the paper here, and also I provided this link to an explanation by Andrew Eng. This is a very good explanation about how this works. Well, there are other efforts in the field of image classification that were done. For example, we have also ResNet that involves feeding from one layer to the other information about the residuals. You get, well, this use of residuals between layers, and this makes well, one of the objectives of this structure is to avoid the problem of vanishing gradients. That is also a problem. It's always a problem in deep learning, where you can get stuck in local optima when training the parameters of a network. Well, this is the effort. You can check the reference here. And then going to the field of object detection, we have here a more complex problem. We don't have only to recognize or classify an image. Also, you have to detect some regions or candidate regions where actually the objects could be present or not. It can be performed in in 2 steps or in 1 step. The 2 steps should involve first recognizing regions where objects could be could exist, and the second step in classifying the objects that actually are to recognizing which kind of object is present in the detected region. So this is a way of doing this, but as time went by, many papers, many efforts were arising to get more efficient models for this, because doing this in 2 steps required many compute resources, and it's not very useful if you want, for example, to get an object detection in real time. So besides some earlier or later efforts in this 2-step classification problem, there were some efforts that tried to make this object detection in one only step that involves regressions of predicting the numbers of the positions of objects, as well as in one only step also classifying which kind of object you can have in each region. So here we have, for example, SSD, a single shot detector, which is one of the architectures that, making use of convolutional networks, tries to detect objects in an image. And also we have YOLO, which is you only look once, with this. Well, this model is in its 4th version, I think. I don't know if there's a newer version, but yes, as SSD, YOLO has gained much attention because they employ this 1-step phase for recognizing objects, employing, for example, a grid of cells that they divide the image in specific cells. And well, the advantage of these models is that you don't need so much calculus to perform this object detection task, but you only need to make 1 step of computing for getting all the objects present. And actually they return all the maps and the classes of object present, as we will see in a script in the final part of my presentation. So yes, I will try to go faster because of the time. We will see now these application cases that are actually in the link. I think you can see the link now. I hope it was solved. It was solved, but well, that slash in the end of the URL was terrible. Well, so I will change to collaboratory. So, what? well, these are the contents of the folder. We will be seeing in the first place this file of CNNs. Well, it's called only CNN. I will try to explain what's done here. I just will run through the code, but I will not. Well, it's the result of an execution of the code. So because of the time that maybe it could require for training some of the models, I will only show the outputs of the cells. Okay, but you can do some executions, do some runs of this code. I think you need to copy the collaboratory file, the notebook, and you can have it running. But well, in this script, I'm showing an example of image classification by means of CNNs. The first step of this script shows the complete from scratch building of a CNN for this task of image classification. Well, in the first step, we have the imports. We are using here TensorFlow and Keras. Here we use the last versions of TensorFlow and Keras, so you can use just importing them, because in Collaboratory we have already those libraries mounted and working when you start running a notebook. Well, here we do this trick for having available the contents of our drive folder for processing with Collaboratory. Well, we can have some, a particular structure for the folders where we have a train folder and a validation folder, and inside the two folders, we have also some folders that contain the images of the different classes that we want to represent and to classify. This is because we can use some routines of data augmentation or other things when we have this class of folder structure. Most automatically the files are already files that we will work with already here. You have to do a copy of the complete folder in your drive folder for this. It's a pity that we don't have much time for explaining that, but well, you can contact me after the presentation if you have problems with this. But you have to make a copy of the script, and yes, I think you have to download this in a zip format from Drive, and then uploading it again into your Drive Google Drive account. So well, I will show how this script works, and then you can try it later. But well, sorry. The structure of the folders is like this. We have a parent folder that is dogs versus cats here. And then we have validation and train folders. And each one of these folders have actually the two classes that we are going to classify here. So if we enter to the dogs folder, we have actually the images of dogs here. And if you enter the other folder, we have images of cats here. So with this said, we have the appropriate folder structure here, and we are mapping this into these variables that are joined with the OS paths. So it's very independent of the operating system that you have in your machine. So just for watching some images of the data set, we have here the code for that, and we are plotting some images in different regions of the screen, or in this case of the cell. So we can see here that there are many images that are actually of different sizes and in different conditions. For example, it is important to note that the illumination, the colors, the situation, the contexts are very different. For example, here we have a cat that is outdoor, it's out of home, and the others, for example, here we have a cat inside his house. So we have also different sizes and proportions of the image. This is more wider, this has more height. So there are many differences in the images that we have, and maybe for the classification task, the process, the model has to deal with these differences. It is very important to note, because if the classifier is robust, then it will have the ability to determine what to do when it has some different conditions in the images. So I included here a data annotation step. Actually, it is an extension of a script of another author that you can check in the first part of the notebook. But well, I tried to get some concepts from machine learning as data annotation and transfer learning that we will be seeing here. The first that we will do here is to generate some images, some samples of images that are also randomly noise added, I mean, randomly modified, for example, rotated or cropped, in order to have a better training for the models that we can train. Well, the class that I use for that is image data generator. That is a TensorFlow class that helps with this process of data augmentation. I mean, you can get more images for the training phase by only modifying the original images that you have. And it's a very good technique for having more robust models that could generalize better. When we say generalize better, it's that they can, for example, recognize or detect well some new data that you feed to the network, and not only having good performance on the training set. It's not a good thing when we train models. Well, so I'll go a little faster here. Well, in this cell, we can see actually the new data generated from the original images. You can see, for example, that if you note, there are some modifications in the angle of the images, or here that you have these long feet, is because the change that the model and the image data generator did on the height of the images, or some crops maybe. You can see that, but for example, here, maybe there is a rotation in this dog. And maybe here there's a zoom. Oh, well, there are many things that you can check there that are present as the result of the data augmentation phase. Well, finally, the model. In this script, I try to build a model which includes some CNN layers. You can see here, this is the way we declare some convolutional layers in TensorFlow. Here we are saying that we want 16 feature maps of 3 by 3 kernel size using ReLU activation, which is actually the one that is used most frequently. And we have the input shape for the images of the size that VCG actually uses. This is why we'll be using the actual architecture of VCG in other cells. So we compose here a complete convolution architecture with some dense layers. It's a multi-layer perceptron at the bottom of the network. And then we have a final layer where we say with only one neuron if we found a dog or not. The not result will be the cat result. So here we have this kind of machine learning multilayer perceptron structure with a classification layer at the end. Well, we compile the model, and here we have the structure. You can check here with model.summary, the actual structure and the number of parameters of each layer. Sorry, I'll go faster here. Well, we built the test set for evaluating this model. Well, there are some tweaks in the training phases, and this is the result that I got in an early execution of this model. You can see that just focus here in the accuracy of the training set because of a little problem that I had, but with the test set. But you can see here that a CNN model trained from scratch, even it actually gets good results in several steps when we perform several steps of training. It's better to have a pre-trained model like BGG for acquiring better results in the classification steps. So that's why I try to show how we can use the structure of BGG. It's very easy to use. We have this BGG16 function or class that actually instantiates the model BGG16 with all the training that it has been done for that, and we can use as it goes for our purpose. So the next steps in this notebook are actually this of instantiating a BGG model that we include only the convolutional layers. It's here. We recognize the last layer that we want to use. It's log 5 pool, which is this layer. So we only will use the convolutional part of this model because it doesn't make sense to have the same number of classes for classification of BGG. We only need 2 classes. And here, for example, we have here the step where we just use the convolutional part of BGG. So I'm running out of time. So, and another important thing here is that we will not train again the weights of the convolutional layers, but we will use them to get the features of our images. So that's the way we actually make this transfer learning step and can use the convolutional layers for our purpose. So here you have the new model that is actually a new TensorFlow or Keras model, and we add to that model this BGG model variable that contains the convolutional parts of BGG16, and then we add to these layers only a flattened layer, which is actually a step of having a vector of 1 dimension with all the numbers that come from the feature extraction complete process. And then we add only this activation, this layer, this dense layer with sigmoid activation that will say if we found a dog or we found a cat. So if we, well, using some parameters of training and things like that, we get this model, and here are the results. The first steps of training, the model actually gets, in just the first steps, 70% of accuracy in the training set. I'm not paying attention for the test set because in this example it was very small, so it's not so trustable. But here you can say that the features that we extracted in each step with BGG for a complete different problem that it was built for are actually very high. So it's very interesting to see that this network is very well trained, and we can get some interesting values here. So, well, you can check here what I'm saying. Well, we have some plots here also showing the behavior of the train and validation losses with the old model that is a CNN model trained from scratch, and this CNN pre-trained model that is Vcc 16. Well, I will go fast to another example that I wanted to share with you. That is about object detection using YOLO, the version 3 in this case. Well, you also can check this GitHub repository for some other stuff about that, but I wanted to show a fully working example for this. So it's actually the same example as did this repository, but I checked that it worked, and it actually performed very well, recognizing objects in a video. So in the previous script, we were solving in some ways the problem of classification in images. Now we want to perform a different task that is more complex, which is object detection but in this case in videos. Sorry, yes, I'm reading here some comments on the chat. The loss actually is in different scales here. You have that's a mistake that I wanted to correct, but I couldn't. Here we have a scale that goes up to from 0.1 and 0.6, and here we have 1 to 5. So that there's not a very good visualization here of the actual results, but you can change this in some lines of code. I couldn't do that earlier, but well, thanks for noting that. Well, I will continue with this script. I have the execution, I mean the results of executing this script, but I will first explain a little bit how it works, and then we will see the rest. The purpose of this script is to show how we can detect objects in a complete video, frame by frame, using YOLO model, the version 3. So the purpose of cloning this repo is only to have actually the source video that the authors use here, and we can download the weights. It's actually the weights of the actual model of YOLO v3 from this URL. And well, as I said, you by only pressing Control.Enter, you can, or doing click here, you can execute the complete script here. I checked that it works, so you can also make this with your own videos, but also remember that you are limited to the YOLO model in terms of what classes of objects you can recognize there. So you cannot recognize anything, but only the YOLO classes that the model was trained for. So here are the steps of getting the original video and the weights of the model. And we have here this code that actually makes the loop by the frames of the video. You can check here that we have OpenCV with video capture, and we iterate reading the next frames of the video until we don't have more frames. It's with this variable, and in each frame we are doing 2 loops here. We are iterating in the different layers of the YOLO model, and for each layer, well, we have we're capturing the outputs of the last layers of the model. And for each object detected, we are performing, we're determining if really we should print the bounding box of the object or not. It works with a level of confidence, which is the probability that the network, it's the confidence that the network has that in that region there's an object present and is of the class that the model says. So here we can tweak this value and use different thresholds of confidence for getting more or less objects. You will see here that some objects are running out. Yes, I am seeing that. The intersection over union is, I think it's the metric that they use, one piece of the metric that they use in YOLO. There's a more complex theory on that. But well, for each object, we are adding some rectangles for the images of the final frames, of the new video. So I have run this script, and the result is actually here. Sorry, I'm gonna show this. Yes, this is the original video. I don't know if you can see this because of my internet connection, but it's a plain video of a highway. You can see that there are many cars and trucks, and the video processed with this script is actually this one. You can see that the frames of the video have been added the rectangles of the different objects that it has recognized. You can also see that maybe the rectangles are not exact with the objects. Sometimes the rectangles are not so accurate. But well, this is the example that I wanted to show about object detection. Well, so up to now, it's my presentation. Thanks for your attention. If you have any question, I think
Yes,
there are
Eduardo.
many questions.
Yeah, can you see Q&A section? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, can you
Yes.
see Q&A section?
I'm seeing the chat, but I don't know if...
Besides chat section, there is Q&A section. Or should I read those questions out to you?
Okay. Yes, I will try to read some of the questions.
Okay.
Yes, well, we have one here. What is the method to choose the number of layers and neurons in each layer? Testing and adjusting after? Well, actually, the number of layers or the number of neurons per layer, in this case, the number of the size of the filters, for example, actually, it is an open problem. It's known as hyperparameter optimization. The hyperparameters are the parameters of a model that do not change when we train. So these are more architectural parameters that we set up when we start with the training of a model. And yes, the method that you can choose for tuning that architecture is well, it's up to it's another optimization problem that you can perform, and there are many studies about that. You can, for example, actually you have some wrappers for this process that, for instance, you can set several numbers of layers that you want to try, and you can run a process that maybe well, that actually tries combinations of those values of processes, of those values of architectures. So yes, it's another problem where you can find much literature about that, but you have to look for optimization, hyperparameter optimization. Sorry, I will type in the chat. And actually, for example, the Vcc 16 is, I think it's the results that authors get when they try different architectures. And you have to remember that if you have many layers, you have more complex models and more maybe well, you lose efficiency when you have more layers in the model. So it's a trade-off that you gotta pay attention to. Well, I don't know if there were some other questions. Any resources to learn transfer learning specifically? Well, the question is well, about some resources to learn transfer learning. There are a plethora of resources in the internet, and well, that's easy to say, but really, if you look through well GitHub or any, I recommend to read. Sorry, I will try a URL here. If you want, for example, to know about the state of the art in different disciplines, or for example, in the problem of object classification, I recommend this site, Papers with Code. It's really a very good source of the last machine learning models in different fields. For example, you have NLP, image classification, and you have here, for example, I can look for image classification, and if I want to know the state of the art in image classification, this site points you to the best data sets in this case, and the best models that have performed well there. And also, going to the transfer learning question that you asked him, you can access some GitHub repos that you have, well, that you can try. For example, these are very good graphics that you have here about the different models and the different performance that they have. And you can access here GitHub repos where the authors actually show how they did to manage with the code, and you can actually do this reproducibility of the experiments of the others. And regarding transfer learning, you have every model nowadays have the instructions of how to instantiate the way, for example, like I did here. For example, you only have to add 1 or 2 lines of code in your script. Here, I'm doing some kind of transfer learning here because I'm actually getting the weights of a model that I already exist. And well, it's very interesting. I work very much in natural language processing, and you have, for example, many language models that nowadays work very well, like BERT or things like, well, models like that. And you can, with 1 or 2 lines of code, you can have them working in your scripts. Yes, I'm sorry, I don't, I can't see all the questions, but I will try to answer the ones that I get. Can we use transfer learning Vcc this 16 for 48 pixel images? Yes, there is a way you can tune the size of the well, of the input layer to Vcc. Maybe we have here, yes, there are many parameters of this function. That's why I left this link here. You can, for example, here, you can set the input shape parameter for Vcc. Oh, I don't know if it's, yes, I think you can see that now. You can tune this input shape to the size of image that you want. Yes, the size, when you change the size of an image, it gets blurred and it gets deformed. So you have, but the most key aspect of CNNs is that they have this translational invariance. I mean, these kinds of networks are capable of detecting these changes in the shapes. So at some point, they are very robust to these modifications in the image. So we don't have to worry very much about that. Well, I have a very large question here. When image is extremely large, is an image to make sense is not possible, because small faces will disappear. Yes, well, the question here, I think, is when we have different kinds of images that maybe in the high resolution versions of the images, we have many details that should be taken care of. When we have those situations, well, it's important to go further with the process of handling the images. If you have such cases, I don't know, it comes to my mind, for example, satellite images, where we have small details that you have to pay attention to. Maybe you can think of an additional process of segmentation of the images. So yes, they are very specific cases. And yes, maybe a plain CNN couldn't do it very well for those cases. And yes, regarding GPU cards, well, depending on the problem that we are tackling in each case, you will have to do some additional steps of processing with the images. And the OpenCV library helps very much with that. Well, when we have some lower level processing that do not require machine learning, we can use of many functions in the OpenCV library. Well, I will try to get some more questions. Well, I have one here. I'm working on medical image captioning using CNNs and transformers. Can you please give me some tips as to how should I write my captions, say 5 for each image, so that the model outputs a good result? Well, my captions. Yes, medical image captioning. Well, it's a very, very complex problem here that involves also natural language processing, I think. Yes, my advice here is you should check out the literature on this problem. I think, for example, you can check out here, I don't know if it's, for example, I don't know if it's actually the problem here with that name, but yes, you should use, yes, you are using transformers, and yes, it's a very complex problem you have there. You have to use generative models for NLP according to the features that you extract from the images. Yes, I think I should need some more information about that, and maybe you can query me by email about it. But yes, I think in the literature there are many works that were performed for that. Well, I'll go through. I don't know how we are about time. Can we continue a little bit more, or should we be finishing now?
Yeah, if you are comfortable, we can take 2-3 questions in 5 minutes and then wrap it up.
Okay. Well, here I have one other question. I'm also working on medical imaging. In my case, it is EEG data. I'm trying to solve a classification task. I need to know if we can use CNN for features extraction for the two-dimensional EEG data. In my case, it is array channel X amplitude value. Well, maybe I know exactly how in this field it works. A first suggestion is to check out the literature and the best results in this problem. But maybe you can use a sort of first transformation of the data into numbers of, well, of amplitude in this case. And maybe for efficiency constraints, it should be good to turn this EEG image. I don't know if it's an image or what is it, but you can work this as a series prediction. I mean, as a regression problem over time series. I think that time series could help with that. And yes, there are many CNN's approaches for time series. So yes, maybe you should transform the data into numerical arrays first, and then processing that. I don't know the field and the requirements of efficiency or precision that you have there, but it's very interesting to research on. So, well, any recommendations for books? Well, in general, I try to first do some readings of authors that publish their results on GitHub or things like that. I would recommend some more practical. Any good recommendations for books to read about YOLO? If you go to the publication and we go to the article that the authors maybe published for making this technique known, maybe, well, it's a more technical reading, and I should recommend starting, for example, through Papers with Code. It's a good starting point for having different implementations of whatever we are looking for. But about books, I don't know if actually there are some books that explain in detail the YOLO model. But well, I think with the code resources that we have here, you can get a very clear understanding of how it works and how it performs the detections. Didn't talk. Well, here you didn't talk about the effect of padding and stride in the convolution process. Well, it's actually one of the parameters that we have in the function when we, for example, instantiate. No. As I go to the presentation here. Padding. Yes. The padding and the stride are the parameters that adjust the frontier pixels of the convolution. For example, if you want to know this, if you want to get the value of, for example, this pixel in the new, I don't know if it's this exactly, in the new feature map, you can, well, you have a complete region. For example, if you are using a convolution of 3x3, you have a complete field of pixels here, and you can get a new value for this. But in the case of the pixels in the borders, you don't have a complete 3x3 region of values, okay? But, well, there's a constraint of classical GNNs, but there are some parameters that you can use, for example, in Keras, to set that you want to include these pixels. And maybe you can use, for example, a sub-region for calculating these values for those pixels specifically. And the strife value tells us how well, how big will be the step for making the max pooling process. No, I think it's the stripe. I think it refers to the value of the step here. If we go pixel to pixel, well, but these are parameters that you can also adjust in the well, in the configuration of CNNs. You use Keras, for example. But well, you can try also different values for that when you do the hyperparameter optimization. Sorry. Well, we have here my email. This is my email address. Copy it in the chat as they are asking.
Yeah, Eduardo, can we wrap it up because it's very much over time?
Yes.
Yeah. Participants who want to ask question can reach out to you on your email ID also, I guess.
Sorry, can you repeat?
So participants having questions can reach out to you on your email ID.
Yes, of course.
I just wanted to inform. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Eduardo. On behalf of Analytics Vidya, I would like to thank you for your time and for delivering such a wonderful session. I'm sure our audience found it insightful, and hopefully we can conduct more such sessions with you in the future also.
Thank you very much for the opportunity of giving this talk.
Yes, thanks. And I would like to request all the attendees to fill in the poll about feedback, as it helps us to conduct more such sessions in the future. Also, if you wish to conduct a webinar or are facing difficulty in registering, connect with us at editor@analyticsvidya.com. We'll be back with another session of the DataHour on 23rd July, that is tomorrow only. The link is available in the chat section. Till then, keep learning and bye to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.